Rebecca's heart pounded so fast that she feared it would burst from her chest. She was cramped inside a dark closet, her knees pressed against a row of expensive black leather shoes. The scent of rich cologne filled her nostrils, making her dizzy. She had never been so close to danger, and the thought of being discovered sent a chill through her body. The closet belonged to Adrian Stone, one of the most powerful CEOs in the entire city. He was cold, strict, and known for his fierce temper. He was also wealthy, so wealthy that he could change a person's life with a single signature. Rebecca shuddered at the possibility that she was about to see a side of him no one else had seen, or worse, he might see her. She did not want to be there. She had not planned it. But now, hidden behind racks of hand-tailored suits, she wondered if this one reckless decision would ruin her forever. She was shaking and trying not to breathe too loudly. Through the small slivers between the closet doors, she watched the light in the bedroom flick on. Then she heard footsteps, steady and calm, pacing across the floor. Rebecca's mind flashed to the events that had led her to this point. She felt fear, uncertainty, and a strange sense of curiosity. Deep down, she knew she had no business being in Adrian Stone's private suite. Nobody did. He was secretive about his personal space. Even employees who worked in the house stayed on the other side of the mansion. The master bedroom was off limits. Yet, here she was, sneaking a peek into the most personal realm of an untouchable man. She almost yelped when the closet door slid open. She could see the outline of his tall figure. He was only inches away. She almost came face to face with him. Only a few garments separated them. The light filtering into the closet lit up the side of his strong jaw and the mild scar near his temple. Her heart hammered so loud, she was sure he could hear it. He stood there. She held her breath. If he looked down a bit more, he would see her slender figure huddled in the shadows. She prayed he would not. She stayed frozen, her muscles tense. He shifted slightly, pulled out a navy jacket, and sighed in frustration. He muttered something under his breath about a lost document. Then he stepped back. The closet door slid shut, leaving Rebecca in darkness again. She heard him move around in the bedroom. Another drawer opened. Papers rustled. Her mind raced. Should I try to escape now, or wait until he leaves? That unsettled feeling weighed on her chest. She was trapped in a place she had no right to be. If he found her, her entire world would crash. But she realized she was not just nervous about being caught. She was also feeling a strange ache in her chest, a pull toward this mysterious man who was so guarded. She had known him from a distance, but she had never been this close. She had never seen the way his eyes flickered with frustration or the tightness in his shoulders when he thought he was alone. She took shallow breaths. The fine hairs on her arms rose as she imagined the outcome of her decision. What if, in the next moment, the closet doors opened wide and she locked eyes with Adrian Stone? Would he call the police? Would he fire her? Or would something else, something unexpected? In that moment, the sensation of suspense was so strong it felt like a heavy blanket resting on her. That was the start of the most dramatic chapter in Rebecca's life. She had always been a normal person, leading a quiet existence. Now, she was hiding in the closet of a man who could destroy her, or perhaps change her life forever. Little did she know, this dark room, lined with suits and shoes that cost more than her entire year's rent, would become the place where her heart would crack wide open. And at the end of it all, she would have to decide if this forbidden moment would stay hidden or if it would spark the most meaningful bond she had ever known. 2 weeks earlier, Rebecca Turner never would have believed that she would wind up crouched in the closet of Adrian Stone's private suite. She had been a diligent administrative assistant, doing her best to keep her head down in a big city full of ambitious people. Rebecca was 25 years old, with long chestnut hair and warm brown eyes. She was never the center of attention. and she preferred it that way. She lived in a modest apartment and spent most of her free time reading or attending night classes to learn more skill shopping to get a better job eventually. The day she stepped into Stone Enterprises had been a stroke of luck. She had landed a temporary position helping with a big project. Adrian Stone was rarely at the office, and she never expected to even meet him. Her job was to make sure the files were in order and the documents for upcoming deals were correct. She had heard about Mr. Stone's reputation. He was a business shark, a man who closed deals with surgical precision and had no tolerance for mistakes. He was also known for being distant, the kind of man who never shared personal details with anyone. Workers whispered about him, but not a single person truly knew him. He was rumored to arrive at the office late at night sometimes, checking important details that no one else would notice. Rebecca's first close call with Adrian Stone happened late on a Friday. She had stayed behind to finish a small task because she didn't want any errors attached to her name. She was alone in the huge open office. The sun had set, and she was preparing to shut down her computer when she spotted him from across the room. He was taller than she had expected. His shoulders were broad, and his suit fit perfectly. His dark hair was neatly styled, and his sharp features gave him a look of quiet intensity. That night, he had come to retrieve a folder. Rebecca had felt her stomach tighten with nerves as he approached her desk. She stood so quickly her chair almost rolled away. "Mr. Stone," she stammered, gripping the edge of the desk. He nodded in greeting, not showing a hint of a smile. "I'm looking for the file about the Northbridge project." She cleared her throat. "Yes, sir. I filed it an hour ago under the new system we implemented. I can fetch it for you right now." He watched her with a cool gaze as she scrolled through the computer. She felt as though his eyes were evaluating her every move. Once she located the file, she printed the papers and placed them in a crisp folder. Then, she handed it over. "Thank you," he said, his tone flat. She tried to keep her voice steady. "I'm happy to help, if there's anything else." He was already turning away, but he paused for a moment, as though another thought had struck him. He turned back to look at her. "Have we met before?" She shook her head quickly. "Only in passing, sir. I work in administration." He gave her a brief once-over. For a heartbeat, Rebecca felt as though he might actually smile, but then his features became neutral again, and he gave a slight nod before walking to the elevator. That was their first real encounter. It was not particularly eventful, yet it changed something inside Rebecca. It was brief, but it made her wonder, did Adrian Stone notice people more than he let on? Over the following week, Rebecca worked tirelessly. She discovered that tasks related to Adrian Stone had to be handled perfectly. Her supervisors gave her new responsibilities, sometimes requiring her to sift through old archives. It was then she learned Adrian had a reputation for digging up obscure details from a decade ago if it could help him in a business deal. She never expected that her thoroughness would catch the eye of Mr. Stone's personal assistant, a sharp woman named Judith Brown. One day, Ms. Brown marched over to Rebecca's desk and said, I need you to run these files to Mr. Stone's home. He wants them ASAP." Rebecca's eyes went wide. "His home?" "Yes," Ms. Brown said. "He's not in the office today. He has a meeting at his estate, and he wants to look over these documents. I can't leave because I have to coordinate the meeting schedule here. You're the only one I trust to do it right." Of course, Rebecca did not feel ready to deliver files to the big boss's private mansion. Still, she did not want to disappoint Ms. Brown or Mr. Stone, so she agreed. She left the office with a set of neat folders, feeling like a delivery person about to enter forbidden territory. An hour later, Rebecca found herself standing at the massive gates of Stone Manor. Her heart raced. A guard let her in, and she walked up a long driveway lined with carefully groomed hedges. The mansion loomed ahead, an impressive structure with tall columns and walls of glass. At the front door, a maid greeted her politely and asked her to wait in the foyer. Rebecca tried not to stare at the towering ceilings, the shiny marble floors, or the priceless artwork on the walls. Everything spoke of power and status far beyond her imagination. After a few minutes, the maid returned. "Mr. Stone isn't ready to see anyone yet," she said in a respectful tone. "He's in a meeting with business partners. You can leave the folders with me." But Rebecca remembered Ms. Brown's instructions. "I have to give them to him, or to his direct representative. Ms. Brown said they're extremely important." The maid nodded. "Of course. Let me see if anyone else can take them." Time crawled as she waited in that huge foyer. She took a few steps around, admiring a portrait on the wall that seemed to show a younger Adrian Stone with two older individuals, possibly his parents. She couldn't help but notice the firm set of his jaw even in the painting. She wondered if there was some softness hidden behind that polished exterior. Eventually, she got restless. She peeked down a nearby corridor, searching for the maid or for any sign of life. The voices of men talking grew louder. She recognized Adrian Stone's voice among them, calm, direct, and unstoppable. She thought maybe she could slip the files to him discreetly, then leave. So she walked quietly down the hall, following the voices. She found herself near a large doorway that stood slightly ajar. She heard Adrian's cool tone discussing a contract with two other men. She dared to take another step. That was when she heard a piece of information that made her heart skip. "I won't accept their counteroffer," Adrian said, his voice low and firm. "If they think they can fool me by hiding facts, they're going to regret it." There was a tense pause, and then one of the other men tried to soothe him. "Let's not jump to conclusions. Maybe we should talk to them again." But Adrian's voice was unwavering. "No, my decision is final. If they can't meet my terms, then I'll withdraw. They need me more than I need them." Rebecca felt a pinch of admiration and fear. In that moment, she saw how a big business deal worked in real life. She realized she was eavesdropping on something private. So she took a step back. That was when someone coughed. The door swung open wider. Adrian Stone's gaze fell on her. Rebecca's heart jumped to her throat. She clutched the files to her chest. He stared at her. "Why are you here?" She forced a smile, feeling her cheeks burn. "Two came to deliver these documents. Ms. Brown sent me. I'm sorry if I interrupted." He raised an eyebrow. For a moment, she was sure he would scold her, but then he simply extended his hand. She moved closer and handed him the folder. "You could have given these to the maid," he said. She cleared her throat softly. Yes, I tried. But Ms. Brown told me to hand them over to a direct representative, and the maid said you were in a meeting." He nodded, flipping through a few pages. "They're all here?" "Yes." I made sure each section was organized. She tried to keep her voice from shaking. He turned his attention back to the men in the room. "You two go on. Wait for me in the lounge. I need a moment." When the other men walked away, Adrian's sharp gaze returned to Rebecca. He towered over her, with a presence that made her feel exposed yet oddly curious. She remembered how people said he had no patience for errors. She hoped she had not just committed one. "Is there something else?" he asked. Her thoughts spun. "No, sir. I was just about to leave." He nodded slowly. "All right. Thank you for bringing these. You can see yourself out." She turned to go, but at the threshold, a strange pull made her glance back at him. He was still looking at the folder, reading with deep focus. There was a slight crease between his brows. In that moment, something flickered in the air, a silent possibility that maybe, in another world, they might have a friendly conversation. But she let it go, scolding herself for even thinking such a thing. She left the mansion, telling herself she had done her job. There was no reason to think about Adrian Stone or his business deals. She was just an employee. She had no place in his life. She had no clue that soon she would stand in the very center of his life, hidden away in a shadowy corner he never allowed anyone else to see. A few days passed uneventfully. Rebecca returned to her usual tasks at the office. Ms. Brown seemed pleased with her work. In fact, Ms. Brown told Rebecca she might extend her contract, which excited Rebecca. She liked the idea of working in a big company and moving up if she could prove herself. Then, one afternoon, Ms. Brown called her to the side. "Rebecca, we're missing some important blueprints for the Westbridge deal. Mr. Stone left them at the mansion. We need them here by tomorrow morning, but everyone else is busy. Would you be willing to pick them up?" Rebecca blinked. "Yes, of course," she replied, even though her stomach fluttered. The thought of going back to that estate made her both anxious and a bit eager. She couldn't deny that she felt a thrill stepping inside a place so grand. When Rebecca arrived at the mansion, it was late. The sun was dipping behind the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. She walked up to the door, and the same maid greeted her with a polite smile. "Good evening," the maid said. "You've come for the blueprints?" Rebecca nodded. "Yes. I was told Mr. Stone left them here, and I need to collect them for tomorrow's meeting." "He's in the study," the maid said. "He asked not to be disturbed, but this is important, so perhaps I can help you find the documents." Rebecca nodded, relief flooding her. She'd rather avoid facing Adrian Stone alone if she could. It felt like a museum after closing hours, every sound echoing through the long corridors. They reached the study, but the room was empty. The door stood half open, and inside were shelves filled with books and binders. A large oak desk sat near a window, with a dim lamp casting golden light. The maid searched around, opening a few drawers. "I can't seem to find the blueprints here," she said, looking puzzled. "Mr. Stone must have moved them." Rebecca spotted a folder on top of a shelf. It was too high for her to reach, so she stood on her tiptoes. Still, she could barely brush the edge with her fingers. "I'm sorry," the maid said, flustered. "Let me fetch a stool. I'll be right back." She dashed out of the room, leaving Rebecca alone. Rebecca stood there, eyeing the folder. She looked around for a step stool or something similar. Spying a small side chair in the corner, she decided to try to use it. She carefully moved the chair to the shelf, climbed on it, and reached again. When she managed to pull the folder down, she opened it and saw it held drawings of building floors and expansions blueprints that matched what Ms. Brown was expecting. She smiled, relieved. But just as she was about to climb down, her foot slipped. She lost her balance and tried to steady herself by grabbing the edge of the shelf. A wave of panic surged through her as the shelf threatened to topple. She heard footsteps rushing toward the study. She imagined a horrifying crash of books, breaking vases, or something equally dreadful. But in a swift motion, someone caught her from behind, steadying her before she could fall. She gasped and turned to see who had rescued her. Adrian Stone's strong hands were firmly around her waist, holding her upright. Her heart thumped wildly. There he washed his face mere inches from hers, a mix of worry and annoyance in his eyes. "What are you doing?" he demanded, helping her gently off the chair. She could barely speak. "I'm sorry. I was trying to reach this folder. I thought it might be the blueprints for tomorrow's meeting." He exhaled, sounding more relieved than angry. "Did you hurt yourself?" Rebecca shook her head. "No, I'm all right, thank you." He released her. She took a step away, feeling breathless. The maid burst into the room seconds later, her face red with concern. Adrian waved it off. "Never mind." His eyes landed on the folder in Rebecca's hands. "Is that it?" She opened the cover.
"Yes."
"These are the Westbridge blueprints." He nodded. "Good. Then you're done here." But he didn't turn to leave. Instead, he studied her, making her feel uneasy. "Why did you feel the need to risk climbing?" She swallowed. I didn't want to trouble anyone. And you were busy. He pursed his lips in a slight frown. I don't want my employees breaking bones in my house. Next time, ask for help or wait. His tone was stern, yet there was a concerned undertone that made Rebecca's pulse quicken. She nodded quickly. Understood, Mr. Stone. Thank you. I apologize for the disruption. He stepped back, letting her pass. She could feel his gaze on her as she left the study, hugging the folder. That night, she did not sleep well. She kept picturing Adrian Stone's arms around her, saving her from a fall. She had never felt so rattled or so strangely thankful. She tried to dismiss the memory as just a startling moment, but deep down, she sensed that something had shifted in her feelings. She was thinking about him more than she cared to admit. Over the next few days, Rebecca's duties expanded. She was needed for all sorts of tasks because a major deal was about to close, and Stone Enterprises was in a whirlwind of final checks. Brown frequently gave Rebecca new assignments, praising her for her detail-oriented work. This included organizing various contracts, handling updates, and sending them to Mr. Stone's personal office. Twice more she visited the mansionalways carefully, always with a sense of unease. The second visit was brief. She dropped off some financial records with the head of security at the entrance. The third visit came just before everything changed. Late on a Wednesday evening, Ms. Brown called Rebecca's work phone. There's a huge mix-up with the contract for the Eastwood deal, she said. We have the older version, but Mr. Stone needs the updated one right now. He left the final copy in his private study at the mansion. He wants it before midnight. Rebecca was exhausted, but she knew Ms. Brown would not ask this unless it was critical. I'll go right now, she said, grabbing her coat and purse. She did not stop to question why Miss Brown herself did not handle it. She had learned to accept her tasks without complaint. 30 minutes later, she arrived at Stone Manor. The sun had fully set, and clouds covered the moon. The mansion looked dark and imposing. The guard at the gate recognized her, let her in, and directed her to the main entrance. One of the house staff told her Mr. Stone was away but would be back soon. Rebecca nodded and said she would wait in the study to find the document. With that, she walked through the corridors she was starting to know fairly well. However, she took a wrong turn and found herself in a hallway she had never seen before. The lights here were softer, and the doors were closed. Something about the place felt different, more personal. She passed by what seemed like a small library, then another door that was locked. At the end of the hallway, she noticed a large room with double doors cracked open. Curiosity tempted her. She stepped closer, gently pushing one door aside. She discovered the mansion's master bedroom. A wave of embarrassment hit her. She was definitely not supposed to be here. This was where Adrian Stone slept, a space that likely no one was allowed to enter unless they were part of the housekeeping staff. But as she turned to leave, she spotted a folder on a side table near the bed. She recognized the label, Eastwood Contract. It was partly visible under a lamp. She glanced around, seeing no one. If that folder was the one she needed, it would save her a lot of searching. She could grab it and be on her way without causing trouble. The only problem was, did she have permission to step into Mr. Stone's private room? She weighed her options. Ms. Brown said the contract was urgent. If this was it, then this was the fastest solution. She walked to the bedside table. Yes, it was the Eastwood Contract. She picked it up, flipping through the pages to confirm. She could leave now, return to the office, and everything would be fine. But then she heard footsteps in the hallway. Voices of them sounded like Adrian Stone. Her pulse spiked. If he found her in his bedroom, rummaging around, he might think she was stealing or snooping. All the trust and goodwill she had earned could vanish in an instant. She panicked. The only place she saw to hide was the large wooden closet on the other side of the room. She hurried across the space, her heart hammering, and slipped inside, carefully shutting the door behind her. That led her straight to the moment of terror she never expected to experience. Crouched in Adrian Stone's personal closet, hugging the Eastwood contract, listening to the sound of his voice as he approached, she had no plan for how to explain herself. She only knew she needed to remain hidden until he left. But fate had other ideas. Time felt frozen as Rebecca listened to Adrian's footsteps enter the room. Another voice accompanied him, a deep male voice. The two men exchanged a few comments about a recent negotiation. She could make out words here and there. That new bid is too high. Investors are asking for more transparency. She heard Adrian sigh. I'll need to look over the final details tonight. Then we can discuss it in the morning. Let's wrap this up. The second man agreed. The bedroom door opened again, then clicked shut. Rebecca breathed a cautious sigh of relief. Perhaps Adrian had shown the other man out and would soon leave himself. She held her breath, waiting for him to exit so she could sneak away. But the next thing she heard was the soft sound of footsteps heading right toward the closet. Her heart stopped. She knew she had no place to run. She pressed herself against the back wall, hoping the darkness would hide her. Then, without warning, the door slid open. Light from the bedroom spilled in. She saw Adrian Stone's tall figure. His eyes darted downward, and he froze, their gazes locked. For a second, neither of them moved or spoke. Rebecca's heart pounded in her ears. He was so close she could feel the warmth of his presence. His voice was low, tense. Why? Are you in my closet? She gulped, struggling to find her voice. I'm sorry, she finally managed. I didn't mean I heard you coming, and I panicked. The contract was on the table, and... He stepped back slightly, allowing her to step out. She did so slowly, her eyes wide. The folder clutched against her chest like a shield. She felt small and foolish. She expected him to unleash a tirade, to call the police, to scold her. But to her astonishment, he stayed silent for a few seconds, as if trying to absorb the situation. What contract? He asked, his voice still careful. She held out the folder. The Eastwood contract. Ms. Brown said you needed it right away. I came here to find it, saw it on your table, then I heard you coming, and I hid. She swallowed hard, trying not to tremble. I was afraid of what you'd think if you found me in your bedroom. His stern face twitched, possibly with annoyance or confusion. You thought I would accuse you of what? Snooping? Yes, she said meekly. This is your private room. I had no business being here. I was just trying to do my job. Her voice cracked at the end. Adrian studied her for a tense moment. His gaze was intense, but there was something else too. A flicker of concern. You could have left, he said. You didn't have to hide like that. She forced a shaky laugh. I panicked. I guess I made a bad choice. He slowly reached for the folder, taking it from her grip. His fingers brushed against hers. The touch sent a jolt through her, but she tried not to let it show. All right, he said, flipping it open. Yes, this is the final version. Good. Rebecca stood there, trapped between shame and the inability to leave. Adrian seemed uncertain about how to handle the situation, which was surprising for a man who was always in control. The hush stretched on for a few uneasy seconds. Then, to her surprise, he nodded. You found what I needed, he said softly. Thank you. She blinked. So, I'm not fired? His lips curved ever so slightly, almost into a smile. No, you're not fired. His gaze flickered to the closet behind her. But let's avoid incidents like this in the future. If you need something, just ask my staff or me directly. She nodded, exhaling in relief. Her eyes darted to the floor, heat rushing to her cheeks. She felt ridiculous standing there in the middle of his bedroom, wishing she could vanish. But she also felt an unexpected sense of closeness to him, as if she had seen a private part of his world no one else knew. He stepped aside, leaving space for her to walk past. She did so, feeling her heart beat thunder in her chest. She could sense his gaze on her. In that moment, an odd bond formed, one that made Rebecca aware of every breath she took, every small movement she made. When she reached the bedroom door, she paused and glanced back. Adrian stood near the bed, the folder in his hand, watching her with a guarded expression. She opened her mouth, searching for something to say, but no words came. Then she quietly slipped out, shutting the door behind her. Rebecca spent the next day expecting a summons to Adrian's office or Ms. Brown's desk. She imagined that Ms. Brown would call her in, frowning, and demand an explanation for her unprofessional behavior. Yet no such call came. Instead, when she arrived in the morning, she found a small note on her desk. "I appreciate your diligence. Keep up the good work, A. Stone." Her heart thumped. The note was typed, not handwritten, but seeing his initials at the bottom made her cheeks warm. She tucked the note away, unsure how to feel. She was relieved she wasn't in trouble, yet that note felt more personal than a typical business memo. For the next few days, life at the office continued as usual. Rebecca buried herself in tasks, staying late to complete files. But sometimes, she thought she caught a glimpse of Adrian Stone passing by, his gaze landing on her for an extra second. The tension inside her grew. She would remember the moment he opened the closet door, the way his eyes widened slightly in surprise. It made her stomach flutter. A sense of guilt also gripped her, because she didn't know if these thoughts were appropriate. He was her boss, after all, a CEO known for his strict boundaries. Yet, there was a spark she could not deny. It made her wonder if he felt it too. Every time their eyes met, she felt an unspoken pull. But how could she act on it? She was just a junior administrative assistant in a giant company. Even if he was interested in her, the gap between them was too wide. One evening she stayed late to finish a set of reports. The office was quiet, the fluorescent lights above casting a dull glow. Most employees had gone home. Rebecca found herself alone in the department, typing away. That was when she heard footsteps approaching. She lifted her head, and there he was. Adrian Stone stood at the edge of her cubicle. He wore a tailored suit, of course, but his tie was slightly loosened, as if he'd had a long day. She quickly stood up, her breath catching. "Good evening, Mr. Stone," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. He nodded, sliding one hand into his pocket. "You're still here?" "Yes. I'm finishing these reports. They need to be ready by morning." She hoped he wasn't about to tell her off for working late without clearance. But he seemed calm. "May I see them?" he asked. She nodded, and turned her computer screen so he could view her work. He studied the documents for a moment, scrolling through numbers and charts. "You're thorough," he remarked. "I notice few errors in your files." She smiled shyly. "I try to be careful. That's how I avoid mistakes." He nodded. "I appreciate that. Mistakes are costly in our business." Silence settled. She could feel the hum of the air conditioning and the weight of his presence. Then he cleared his throat. "I want to apologize," he said, surprising her, "for frightening you the other night. Finding you in my closet was unexpected. I could have handled it better." Rebecca blinked. "No, I'm the one who should apologize. I'm sorry I trespassed in your private space. I should have left the room immediately, but I panicked." He gave a slight nod, his expression gentler than she'd ever seen. "Let's put it behind us. And, if you ever need to find something at the house again, let the staff do the searching. I don't want you feeling you need to do everything alone." She smiled, a small wave of gratitude washing over her. "I understand. Thank you for your concern." He lingered, as if there was something more he wanted to say, but then he stepped back. "You should call it a night soon. Don't wear yourself out." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving her with her heart pounding. A single thought echoed in her mind. He was concerned about me. She tried to push that thought aside, telling herself it was just a polite gesture from an employer to an employee. Yet, she knew deep down that something had changed between them, something that could no longer be ignored. In the weeks that followed, the dealings of Stone Enterprises reached a fever pitch. Contracts were signed, new projects launched, and expansions planned. Through it all, Rebecca found herself busier than ever. Her reputation for careful work spread, and Ms. Brown assigned her more tasks that brought her into indirect contact with Adrian Stone. They continued to have brief exchanges, usually about work-related topics. Each time, Rebecca felt that unspoken pull grow stronger. She would notice the subtle shift in his posture when he saw her, or the quiet focus in his eyes when she spoke. But neither of them crossed the line. He was her boss. She was his employee. They both knew the limits. Yet a turning point arrived one afternoon when Ms. Brown approached Rebecca with an unusual request. "Mr. Stone has a business dinner this evening with high-profile investors," Ms. Brown said. "He wants you to attend and help organize the paperwork." Rebecca's eyes went wide. "Me? But usually you go with him." "Yes, but I have another event to manage tonight. He specifically asked for you to assist him at the dinner." Miss Brown gave Rebecca a knowing look. "I trust you're up to it. Here's the address of the restaurant. Be there by 7. Rebecca took the slip of paper, her heart in her throat. It was an upscale restaurant known for hosting wealthy clientele. She wondered why Adrian Stone had personally requested her presence. But she didn't dare question it out loud. That evening, she arrived promptly. She wore a modest black dress paired with low heels. She clutched a folder with all the necessary documents. She tried to steady her nerves, but the moment she stepped inside, the sheer luxury of the place overwhelmed her. A chandelier sparkled overhead. Each table was set with fine crystal and silverware. She felt a bit out of place, but she reminded herself she was here to work. A maitre d' led her to a private room. Inside, Adrian Stone sat at a long table with 3 other men and 2 women, all dressed in elegant attire. The moment he saw her, he stood and pulled out a chair for her, a gesture that made her cheeks warm. "Rebecca," he said in a smooth tone, "thank you for coming." She nodded and murmured greetings to the others. She recognized a few of them as major investors from the business press. She sat down, placing the folder on the table. Adrian resumed his seat beside her. He introduced her as his administrative coordinator, praising her competence in preparing key documents. The investors smiled politely, greeting her. Throughout the dinner, business talk flowed. They discussed expansions, project timelines, and financial returns. Rebecca answered questions, produced the correct sheets for each point, and kept the meeting organized. Adrian occasionally leaned over to clarify something, his voice low in her ear. She felt a spark each time he spoke, aware of his nearness. She tried to focus on the tasks at hand, but she could not ignore how close they were sitting, how their shoulders brushed when he shifted. As the night progressed, the dinner transformed into casual talk. The group toasted to their future successes. A few of the investors laughed about past deals. Adrian kept his cool demeanor, but Rebecca noticed him glancing her way more than once, as though confirming she was comfortable. At some point, one of the investors, a jovial older man, turned to Adrian. "You've built quite the empire, Stone. But what about your personal life? Any plans for the future beyond business?" Adrian gave him a polite smile. "I prefer to keep my personal matters private, sir, but I appreciate your concern." The man chuckled. "Ah, I understand. We all know how busy you are, but a good partner can do wonders for one's happiness." Adrian nodded but didn't continue the conversation. Rebecca could sense a flicker of tension in him, as if the question touched a nerve. She felt a sudden flash of empathy. This man, who was always in control, might not have the time or the trust to share his life with anyone. When dinner concluded, Adrian escorted the investors out, thanking them for their time. Then, he turned to Rebecca. She shook her head. "That's not necessary, Mr. Stone. I can catch a cab." He gave her a measured look. "It's late. I'd feel better knowing you got home safely." Her heart fluttered. "All right, thank you." They rode together in the back of a sleek black car, the leather seats so plush Rebecca almost sank into them. The driver pulled away from the restaurant. Adrian sat a foot away, his gaze on the passing streetlights. She felt the silence keenly, unsure if she should speak. Eventually, he glanced at her. "You did well tonight," he said. "The investors seemed impressed with your preparation." She smiled. "Thank you. I'm glad I could help." He studied her for a moment. "You've been working hard these past weeks. I noticed the effort you put in." Her cheeks warmed. "Thank you. I just try to do my job well." He nodded. They fell silent again, but it was a more comfortable quiet. She felt her pulse race, realizing that this was the first time they'd been alone together, outside the office or his mansion. The city lights reflected on the windows, playing across his chiseled features. Eventually, the car stopped outside her apartment building. Adrian reached for the door handle, but she spoke up. "It's all right," she said softly. "I can see myself in." He paused, then nodded. "Very well." For a second, she almost thanked him again, but stopped herself. Instead, she opened the door, got out, and leaned down to look at him. "Good night, Mr. Stone." He gave a slight incline of his head. "Good night, Rebecca." The car door shut. She stood on the sidewalk, watching the car blend into the traffic until it disappeared around the corner. An odd ache filled her chest, a mix of longing and confusion. She told herself to be realistic. He was her CEO. There was no future there, no matter what her heart might be whispering. Yet, she couldn't help but wonder if fate had other plans. After all, the path that led her into his closet was anything but ordinary. Maybe, she thought, the unusual way they met was only the beginning. Over the next few weeks, the city's summer heat settled in. Offices cranked up the air conditioning, and employees dressed lightly to stay cool. Rebecca's workload remained high, but the company's biggest deals had finally reached signing stages. She felt proud to have played a part. Brown praised her skill in front of her co-workers, and Rebecca's confidence grew. Still, one part of her life felt unsettled: her confusing closeness to Adrian Stone. They continued to share brief moments. Occasionally, in the hallway, he would pause to ask how her day was going, or if she needed anything for her department. Small gestures, but they felt loaded with unspoken meaning. When their eyes met, the tension between them seemed to thicken, like an electrical charge. Neither spoke about it, though. One afternoon, she had to deliver some paperwork to his penthouse office, the private domain on the top floor of the Stone Enterprises building. Most employees never set foot up there, but Miss Brown handed her the files and gave her clearance to go. When Rebecca entered the penthouse office, she felt as if she'd stepped into another world. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. The furniture was minimalistic yet opulent, every piece carefully chosen. Adrian sat behind a sleek desk, typing on a laptop. He looked up at her approach. "You have those documents?" he asked in a neutral tone. "Yes, sir," she replied. She approached, setting the folder on his desk. He took it, flipping through a few pages. "Thank you." She glanced out the window, trying to steady her breath. The view was breathtaking, a sea of skyscrapers, bathed in afternoon sunlight. When she looked back, she found Adrian watching her with an unreadable expression. "Is there something else on your mind?" he asked softly. She hesitated. In truth, she wanted to ask him about them, about this strange energy they shared, but she couldn't find the courage. She shook her head. "No, sir," she said, stepping back. He stood up, moving around the desk until he was only a couple of feet away. "Rebecca," he said, his tone gentle yet firm, "you can speak freely." Her heart raced. She bit her lip, then forced herself to look him in the eye. "There is something," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "I feel like I'm not sure how to say it." His expression flickered with understanding. "I know," he said. "I feel it too." Her eyes widened. For a moment, the air between them was thick with shared awareness. He took a small step closer, and her pulse roared in her ears. Every nerve in her body felt alive. But before either of them could say anything further, the office phone rang, piercing the silence. Adrian cursed under his breath, hurried to answer it, and signaled to Rebecca that he needed to take the call. She nodded, stepping out quietly. She felt a whirl of emotions, a rush of longing mixed with relief that they didn't have to face the consequences of that moment yet. A few days later, a fierce summer storm descended upon the city. Rain poured in sheets, lightning tore across the sky, and thunder rolled overhead. The roads flooded in some areas. Many businesses shut early, but Stone Enterprises never shut down unless absolutely necessary. Rebecca stayed late again, determined to finish a backlog of tasks. By the time she decided to go home, it was nearly 8 in the evening. The storm raged on, and Ms. Brown had already left. With a sigh, Rebecca packed her things and hurried downstairs. Outside, the rain was brutal. She tried to hail a taxi, but none were free. Her umbrella flipped inside out when a gust of wind hit. She was soaked within seconds. "Rebecca!" came a voice behind her. She turned to see Adrian Stone exiting the building, a large black umbrella shielding him from the downpour. He approached quickly, concern etched on his face. "You'll catch a cold out here," he said. "Come with me. I'll have my driver take you home." She shivered in her damp coat. "Thank you, but I don't want to be a bother." He shook his head. "This is no weather for you to stand around waiting." He led her to a sleek car waiting by the curb. A driver jumped out to open the door, and both of them got in. Rebecca's teeth chattered slightly as the car pulled into traffic. Adrian turned up the heat. "I think you should change into dry clothes as soon as possible." She smiled, though she was embarrassed. Her hair was dripping, and her clothes clung to her skin. "I'll be fine," she said. "Just a quick trip home." He glanced out the window. The rain hammered against the glass. "The driver's telling me many roads are flooded. If it's too bad." Sure enough, after only a few blocks, the car slowed to a crawl. Traffic jammed every street. Water gushed by the curbs. Drivers honked in frustration, but no one could move. Rebecca sighed. "I might be stuck out here all night." Adrian studied her carefully. "My house is closer than your apartment from here. You could wait out the storm at my place if you'd like." Her eyes widened. "I don't want to intrude." He shook his head. "You wouldn't be. In fact, I'd prefer it. It's not safe to be on these roads right now." Rebecca bit her lip, torn between caution and relief. Logic told her it would be better than shivering in a car all night. Besides, the driver was already inching the car toward the mansion's route. "All right," she said softly. "But just until the storm dies down." He gave a curt nod. "Agreed." When they arrived at Stone Manor, the rain still pounded relentlessly. Adrian ushered her inside. Warm lights illuminated the grand foyer. He led her to a guest room on the second floor, where a maid promptly brought fresh towels. Rebecca thanked them, grateful to be out of the storm. "I'll see if we have any extra clothes that might fit you," Adrian told her. "But feel free to take a warm shower first." She nodded, her cheeks flushed. "Thank you. I really appreciate your kindness." He stepped away, leaving her alone in the quiet guest room. She locked the door, set down her belongings, and peeled off her wet clothes. Soon, she stepped into a luxurious shower. Afterward, she wrapped herself in towels and dried her hair. Someone knocked on the door, and a maid's voice called out, "I have a robe and some clothes, miss." Rebecca opened the door a crack, accepted the neatly folded items, and thanked the maid again. The robe was soft, and while the clothes were a bit large for her, likely belonging to a female member of the staff or someone else, they were clean and dry. She dressed and felt immeasurably better. Stepping out of the guest room, she found Adrian waiting in the hallway, his hands in his pockets, looking concerned. "Are you warm enough?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes, thank you. This is much better." He offered a slight smile. "Come downstairs. I'll have something hot prepared for you to drink." She followed him down to the kitchen, which felt surprisingly cozy. Usually, large mansions had cold, impersonal kitchens, but this one had a modern layout, warm lighting, and a homely atmosphere. Adrian set a kettle on the stove for tea. She watched him, feeling a strange sense of comfort. He glanced at her. "I'm not sure what type of tea you like. I have green, black, or chamomile." "Chamomile, please," she said quietly. "That would be nice." He nodded, placing a tea bag in a mug. Rebecca took a seat at the kitchen island, noticing how domestic it all felt. Here was one of the city's most powerful men brewing tea for her in his own kitchen, while the storm raged outside. He slid the mug toward her. "How do you feel?" She sipped the tea. "Better now? Thank you, Mr. Stone." "Adrian," he corrected, his tone soft but firm. "At least here, when we're off the clock, call me Adrian." She met his gaze, her heart pounding. "Adrian," she repeated. The name rolled off her tongue more gently than she expected. He exhaled, leaning against the counter. The glow from the overhead light showed the tired lines around his eyes. "I've been meaning to talk to you about things," he said, his voice low. "I feel we need to clear the air." Her stomach fluttered with nerves. "I know. I feel it too. But I'm not sure where that leaves us." He nodded, turning the kettle off. "It's complicated. We work together. I'm aware of the boundaries. But I also can't ignore that I'm drawn to you." His voice grew quieter. "From the moment I saw you hiding in that closet, I realized I was looking at someone different from anyone I'd known." Rebecca set her mug down, focusing on the steam rising. Her heart pounded so hard, it felt like it might shake her entire chest. "I never wanted to break any rules," she said. "And I don't want to lose my job. But this feeling, it's been growing. I don't know what to do about it." Adrian pressed his lips together, considering her words. Then he stepped closer. "We don't have to decide anything right now," he whispered. She looked up at him. The storm thundered outside, rain hammering the windows. In that moment, they were the only two people in the world. Her breath caught as he slowly reached out and brushed a damp strand of her hair away from her face. They stood like that, the silence thick with longing. Neither moved to close the distance fully, but the weight of what might happen lingered in the air. Then the lightning cracked, lighting up the kitchen for a split second, and the thunder boomed so loud it rattled the glass. She flinched. Adrian's hand moved from her hair to the small of her back, steadying her. She shivered at the contact, but didn't pull away. "You're safe here," he said gently. Rebecca looked up, meeting his gaze. She could see the sincerity in his eyes. She nodded, feeling a sudden surge of emotion she couldn't name, a mixture of gratitude, warmth, and undeniable attraction. Still, she was afraid to cross that line. She drew a shaky breath, stepping back just enough to break his hold. "Thank you," she whispered, lifting her mug again. "I'll stay until the storm ends, then I'll go home." He nodded. "Of course." And though he withdrew his hand, the connection between them still glowed like an ember in the darkness. waiting for a spark to turn it into a flame. Rebecca couldn't sleep. The rain continued to drum against the windows, and flashes of lightning lit the room in sporadic bursts. She lay in the guest bed, thoughts spinning. Could she really keep ignoring her growing feelings for Adrian Stone? At the same time, what would it mean for her job, for her future, if she allowed herself to get involved with her boss? Eventually, she climbed out of bed. The digital clock by the bedside read 1:15 a.m. She decided to find some water, or maybe warm milk to calm her nerves. Dressed in the borrowed sweats, she made her way downstairs, guided by the low glow of hallway lights. She entered the kitchen, expecting it to be empty, but there was Adrian, standing by the large window, watching the storm. He wore a casual t-shirt and gray sweatpants, a far cry from his usual crisp suit. Yet even in this simple clothing, he radiated a calm intensity that made her heart skip a beat. He turned when he heard her footsteps. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked softly. She nodded. "Too many thoughts, and the storm is pretty loud." He gestured for her to join him by the window. She stepped closer, seeing how the rain streaked the glass. Lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled. "I've never seen you so relaxed," she said, noticing the difference in his posture and clothing. "You always look so serious at work." A small smile curved his lips. "I guess I am serious most of the time. Running a company that spans continents isn't a walk in the park." She leaned against the window frame. "I can imagine. But don't you ever take a break?" He shrugged, glancing at her. "A long time ago, I decided my work was my life. It wasn't always this way, but circumstances led me here." She wondered about his past. She'd heard rumors that he had lost his parents when he was young, that he'd inherited the family business but took it to new heights through relentless dedication. She hesitated to pry, but something in his expression invited her to ask, "Can I ask what changed? You said it wasn't always like this." He exhaled, turning his gaze back to the storm. "I won't bore you with my full life story, but after my parents passed, I poured everything into building their company bigger. I thought that if I was strong enough, rich enough, successful enough, I could protect everyone and everything I cared about. That mindset became my identity." Rebecca felt a tug of sympathy in her chest. She gently placed a hand on his arm. "I'm sorry, that sounds lonely." He let out a bitter laugh. "It was, still is, sometimes, but that's the path I chose, at least, until I realized I might be missing something." She studied his profile, the hard line of his jaw softened by the faint reflection of the lightning. "What is it you feel you're missing?" she asked gently. His eyes slid to hers, and a moment passed in electric stillness. "Connection," he said at last. "Trust, someone to share more than just numbers with." Her heart thudded. She recalled all the times she'd seen him alone, whether in a crowded business meeting or in his mansion. He always wore that armor of composure. It hadn't occurred to her that maybe, deep down, he yearned for something else. They stood in silence, the storm outside echoing the turmoil inside their hearts. Finally, she spoke. "You're not the only one who wants that. But it's scary. We both have a lot to lose." He nodded, placing his hand over hers on his arm. "Yes, we do." Lightning lit the kitchen, and in that brief flash their eyes locked. Without conscious thought, they moved closer. She could feel his breath warm against her cheek. Then, gently, he placed his other hand on her waist, drawing her nearer. She tilted her head, and his lips met hers in a tender, hesitant kiss. It was soft, almost questioning, as if both of them were asking if this was truly allowed, if this was truly real. The thunder rumbled again, but it sounded distant compared to the rush in her ears. She leaned into him, letting the warmth of his embrace wash over her. They parted slightly, their foreheads resting together. breath mingling in the quiet space. "Rebecca," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, "I've tried to ignore this. I can't anymore." She swallowed, her heart fluttering. "Neither can I." In that fragile moment, the barriers they had built collapsed. They kissed again, this time with more certainty. The world outside the window was drenched in a relentless storm, but within these walls they found a brief refuge, a piece of solace that both of them had been seeking in different ways. Eventually they broke apart, breathing unsteadily. He brushed a hand across her cheek, catching a stray tear she hadn't realized had fallen. She gave him a shaky smile, unsure of what came next. "Stay," he said softly. "Not just tonight, but in my life, in some way. We can figure out the details, as impossible as they might seem." She nodded, tears pooling in her eyes again. "Yes," she whispered, ignoring the practical worries for that one intense moment. They shared one more gentle kiss before the thunder clapped, as if echoing their silent vow to each other. Rebecca woke up in the guest room the next morning, heart racing as she recalled the previous night. They had parted ways, each retreating to separate rooms, but not before promising to see each other in the morning and talk again. She rose, got dressed in the borrowed clothes, and glanced out the window. The storm had subsided into a soft drizzle. The sky looked gray, but calmer. Nervous, she made her way downstairs. Adrian was in the living room, already dressed in a fresh suit, talking on his phone. When he saw her approach, he ended the call quickly. A small smile flickered on his lips. "Good morning," he said, stepping toward her. "Did you sleep all right?" She nodded. "Yes, thank you. And thanks for your hospitality." He gestured for her to sit on one of the plush couches. He joined her, leaving a bit of space, but not too much. "I wanted to talk to you before you left," he began. "About us." Her heart thumped. "I'm listening." He exhaled slowly. "I know this situation is complicated. If anyone finds out about our relationship, if that's what this becomes, it could create problems for both of us. Office gossip, accusations of favoritism, even legal concerns, though we're not breaking any laws. But Stone Enterprises has a strict code of conduct about workplace relationships, especially when there's a power imbalance." She nodded, her stomach twisting. "I understand. I don't want to cause trouble for you or for myself." Adrian gave her a gentle look. "I don't want to hurt your career. You've worked hard to get where you are, and you deserve respect. If anyone thinks you're getting special treatment, that might overshadow all the effort you've put in. I can't let that happen." She bit her lip, weighing his words. "So, what do we do?" He hesitated, taking her hand. "We have two choices. We keep this to ourselves for now, see how it develops, and handle it discreetly. Or—" he trailed off, as if considering the other option was painful. "Or we agree it can't happen and part ways." Her chest constricted at the second option. She didn't want to part ways, yet she knew the first option would bring its own set of challenges. If discovered, it could explode into scandal. But as she looked into his eyes, she realized she couldn't walk away without at least trying. "I think we should keep it quiet for a while," she said softly. "See if this is something real. If it is, we'll face the consequences together." Relief flickered in his eyes, and he squeezed her hand gently. "I'm glad. Let's move slowly. There's no rush to declare anything publicly." She nodded, her heart still pounding with a confusing mix of hope and fear. "Yes," slowly. They lingered a moment longer, until they both became aware of the time. Adrian cleared his throat. "My driver can take you to your apartment now. I'll be in the office around 10. We'll keep things normal at work. Agreed?" She stood, smoothing her borrowed shirt. "Agreed." He walked her to the door, handing her an umbrella. The rain had died down to a drizzle, but the sky was still wet and cold. She paused on the threshold, wondering if she should offer a hug or a kiss goodbye. But he seemed to read her thoughts. In a quick, subtle move, he leaned forward and touched his lips to her cheek, whispering, "I'll see you soon." Butterflies swirled in her stomach. "See you." She stepped out into the drizzle, feeling as if she were stepping into a new chapter of her life filled with passion, secrecy, and risks. Part of her still wondered if she was doing the right thing. But another part, the part that felt alive whenever she saw Adrian, whispered that this was worth every risk. The next few weeks became a delicate dance of secrecy. At work, Rebecca focused on her tasks, avoiding any behavior that would draw attention. Adrian remained professional, rarely speaking to her outside of business needs. But occasionally, they would brush past each other in the hallway, and their eyes would lock. After office hours, they found ways to meet. Sometimes he would text her with a short invitation. "Can we talk at the cafe near the park?" She would slip away quietly to join him, sitting at a secluded table where they could converse without being seen by coworkers. Other times, he would come to her apartment late at night, wearing a simple shirt and jeans to avoid notice. They would share quiet dinners, talking about everything but business. During those stolen moments, she learned more about the man behind the powerful CEO persona. He enjoyed reading crime novels, had a subtle sense of humor, and admitted he sometimes wished he could vanish from the corporate world for a while, just to breathe. In return, she shared her own dreams, finishing school, maybe starting her own small business someday. He listened attentively, encouraging her. She never thought a person like Adrian Stone would care about her hopes. But he did. Their bond deepened. Their feelings became stronger. Yet the stakes rose too. One evening, Ms. Brown called Rebecca into her office with a pointed look. "You've been doing wonderful work," Ms. Brown said, tapping a pen against her desk. "But I have to ask, is there anything going on between you and Mr. Stone?" Rebecca's heart nearly stopped. She struggled to keep her voice steady. "Why do you ask?" Ms. Brown leaned back. "I've noticed that he seems more aware of you. Others might notice it too. I wanted to warn you that rumors spread easily here." Rebecca swallowed. "We're not. We have a strictly professional relationship, Ms. Brown." Ms. Brown gave her a long stare, then nodded slowly. "Good, because any personal involvement would be frowned upon, especially if it appears you're being favored." Rebecca forced a smile. "I understand. Thank you for the concern." She left the office with trembling hands, fear gripping her at how close Ms. Brown had come to the truth. That night, she told Adrian about the conversation. He sighed, running his hands through his hair. "Ms. Brown is sharp. If she suspects something, others might too. Maybe we should be more careful." Rebecca agreed, though her heart sank at the thought of fewer shared moments. She was falling for him, and part of her wanted to shout their relationship from the rooftops. But she knew the reality: they had to protect both their reputations. So they continued their careful dance. Late-night visits became more infrequent. Instead, they exchanged texts and calls. Rebecca reminded herself that patience was key. She believed that once Adrian found a way to address the company's concerns, they could be open about their bond. That belief was tested when Adrian invited her to Stone Manor for a small gathering. He hosted a few clients and staff for a casual mixer. It was meant to celebrate the success of a recent project. Brown and a handful of department heads were invited, along with some junior employees. Rebecca was included, presumably because of her work on the Eastwood and Westbridge deals. She was excited to attend but wary of being too obvious around Adrian. She arrived that evening in a modest yet flattering dress. The manor's foyer was decorated with tasteful flower arrangements, a few strings of lights, and a selection of elegant refreshments. She mingled with others, trying not to stare at Adrian across the room. He in turn greeted guests politely and kept a respectful distance. However, their eyes found each other every so often, and in those silent glances, she felt a surge of warmth. Near the end of the night, he made a short speech praising everyone's hard work, and Rebecca noticed Ms. Brown's gaze flick to her. She forced herself to keep a neutral expression, applauding with the rest. After the speech, people began to trickle out. The event was a success. Rebecca lingered, hoping for a chance to talk to Adrian in private, but Ms. Brown was standing near, as if making sure no one left anything behind. Feeling disappointed, Rebecca walked out the main door, heading for the driveway. The sky was clear this time, a pleasant evening. Suddenly, someone touched her arm. She turned to see Adrian, who had quietly followed her. He glanced around, ensuring no one was watching. "Come with me," he whispered, guiding her down a side path that led to the garden. They walked briskly among manicured bushes and blooming flowers. At last, they reached a secluded corner behind a high hedge. He turned to face her, his breath uneven. "I couldn't let you leave without seeing you." She smiled, heart pounding. "I was hoping we'd have a moment." He brushed a thumb across her cheek. "I hate pretending in front of everyone, but it's better than risking your career or a scandal." His voice trembled slightly with frustration. "I'm trying to figure out how to navigate this. There must be a way. I just need time." She laid a hand on his chest, feeling the steady thump of his heartbeat. "I trust you, but please, don't shut me out." He nodded, pulling her into a gentle embrace. She closed her eyes, inhaling the faint scent of his cologne. For a moment, he lowered his head to hers and pressed a soft kiss to her lips. The night sky and the rustle of leaves bearing witness to their stolen secret. They parted reluctantly, aware that any moment someone might wander into the garden. He touched her hand one last time. "Go before Ms. Brown wonders where you went. I'll call you tomorrow." She nodded, swallowing the ache of leaving him behind. "Okay." She slipped back into the house, collecting her purse and saying quick goodbyes to a few lingering co-workers. Ms. Brown arched an eyebrow but said nothing. Rebecca left, the memory of his touch lingering on her lips. As she drove away, her stomach fluttered with a mix of joy and worry. She knew that they couldn't hide forever. Eventually, something or someone would force them to confront the truth. She just hoped that when that day came, their bond would be strong enough to survive whatever the world threw at them. Weeks turned into a couple of months. The tension of hiding grew heavier. Rumors started circulating among co-workers, nothing concrete, but enough to make Rebecca feel paranoid. At the same time, the demands of Adrian's position increased. A few major investors began to question some of his decisions, putting extra pressure on him. One day, Ms. Brown looked tense as she summoned Rebecca to a meeting room. Inside waited a group of department heads, along with the company's legal advisor. They asked Rebecca carefully worded questions about her involvement in certain projects and her interactions with Adrian Stone. Panic twisted her insides, but she kept her answers neutral and professional. When they asked if she had ever met Adrian outside of work assignments, she lied and said she only interacted with him in the line of duty. The department heads exchanged glances. The legal advisor reminded her that honesty was important in corporate matters. She repeated that she was telling the truth, hoping no one could see through her nerves. After that meeting, she immediately told Adrian what happened. He looked grim. "Some of the board members might be stirring up trouble," he said. "They want to see if I've been acting unprofessionally. I think they suspect I'm distracted." Her heart pounded. "So what do we do now?" He rubbed his forehead, stress evident in his posture. "We continue to deny anything personal. Unless they have solid evidence, they can't do anything. But be careful. They might try to catch us off guard." She nodded, though dread coiled in her stomach. But he canceled at the last minute, saying he had to fly out unexpectedly to meet an important investor. She spent the night anxious and alone, wondering if their relationship was about to crumble under the weight of rumors and suspicion. Days passed without word from him. She tried texting, but his responses were brief, often hours late. A part of her feared the worst, that he had decided it was too risky to be with her, and was trying to distance himself. One late afternoon, just as Rebecca considered leaving the office, Ms. Brown called her again. "Rebecca, I need you to go to Stone Manor," Ms. Brown said, looking flustered. "Mr. Stone has returned, but he left important documents in his study. We need them for tomorrow's presentation. Go there now and bring them back, please." Rebecca felt her pulse speed up. She nodded and hurried out, driving to the mansion. Dusk was setting in, a golden glow on the horizon. The gate guard let her in. She parked and approached the front door with a sense of déjà vu. This place had become both a refuge and a danger zone. Inside, the house was oddly silent. She didn't see the usual staff bustling about. "Hello," she called softly. No answer. Maybe he's resting after his trip, she thought. She made her way to the study, her footsteps echoing on the marble floor. Pushing the door open, she found it empty. She spotted the documents she needed on the desk, a thick binder labeled with tomorrow's date. She picked it up, relieved that this errand might be simple. Suddenly, a muffled sound came from somewhere deeper in the house. Her curiosity piqued. She followed the sound down a hallway toward the master bedroom. She hesitated, memories flooding back of the last time she'd been here uninvited. But something felt off. She heard a tense voice, Adrian's voice. He sounded upset. Another voice answered, but she couldn't make out the words. Heart pounding, she crept closer, eventually stopping near a slightly ajar door. She recognized Adrian's distinct tone. He was in a heated argument with someone, his voice low but fierce. "Don't threaten me," Adrian said. "I won't be blackmailed into changing my decisions. Our agreement stands as is." A second voice, rough and stubborn, replied, "This isn't blackmail. I'm giving you a chance to protect your reputation. If the board finds out about your personal affair with an employee, do you think you'll keep your position? Think carefully, Stone." Rebecca froze, her blood running cold. This man was threatening to reveal their relationship. She felt her knees turn weak. Adrian's reply was laced with anger. "Stay out of my personal life. The board has no right to pry into that." The other man let out a dark chuckle. "Oh, but they will, once they see the photos." Photos? Rebecca's mind reeled. Someone had photographed them? Her breathing turned shallow as she realized the full weight of the danger. They had been careful, or so they thought, but apparently not careful enough. Adrian's voice shook with rage. "Get out, now." She heard footsteps storming toward the door. She jumped back, pressing herself against the wall of the hallway. The door swung open, and a heavy-set man in a suit appeared, his face twisted with displeasure. He glanced back at Adrian with a final glare, then marched away, not noticing Rebecca in the shadows. Once he was gone, Rebecca looked into the room. Adrian stood near a small table, fists clenched, looking like he wanted to smash something. She stepped forward tentatively. "Adrian," she whispered. He whirled around, shock on his face. "Rebecca, what are you doing here?" She held up the binder. "Ms. Brown sent me to get this." I heard raised voices. He rubbed his hand across his eyes, exhaling sharply. "You heard everything, I assume?" She nodded, setting the binder down on a nearby chair. "Someone has photos of us?" "I don't know," he said, frustration clear in his voice. "Could be paparazzi, or a private investigator hired by a rival or a board member. He wants me to reverse certain business decisions, or he'll release the photos to the board." Rebecca's heart pounded. "That's blackmail!" Adrian nodded grimly. "Exactly, but if the board sees proof that I've been romantically involved with a subordinate, it could weaken my position. They might force me out." She stepped closer, touching his arm gently. "I won't let them use me to hurt you." He looked at her, sadness in his eyes. "It's not just me they could hurt. Think about your own reputation. You've barely started your career. If they paint you as a cunning employee who seduced the boss, you could be blacklisted in the industry." A wave of fear washed over her, but she steadied herself. "What do we do?" He looked torn. "We have a few choices, none of them ideal. I can try to fight this threat, stand my ground and risk the photos coming out. Or I could give in to his demands, which goes against everything I stand for." He paused, voice cracking. "Or I can step down from my position and tell the board the truth." Rebecca's eyes welled. "No, you've worked so hard for this. I don't want to be the reason you lose it all." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "You're not the reason. It's the blackmailer's fault, not yours." She pressed her face to his shoulder, tears escaping. "I hate this. I hate that we have to choose between each other and our futures." He stroked her hair. "So do I." They stood in silence for a long moment, fear and love woven together in their embrace. At last, Adrian inhaled, as if making a decision. "I won't let anyone destroy what we have. I'm going to fight it, and no matter what happens, I'll protect you." She nodded, lips trembling. "I believe you." He bent down, kissed her softly, then drew back, determination blazing in his eyes. "Go," he said. "Take that binder to Ms. Brown. Act normal. I'll handle this. But promise me something, don't speak of this to anyone else, not yet." She wiped her tears. "I promise." With that, she grabbed the binder and hurried out, her mind swirling with fear. The final showdown was looming. She could sense the suspense building like a thundercloud, ready to burst. She only hoped that when it did, they would find a way to stand together and not be torn apart. In the days that followed, Adrian worked tirelessly behind the scenes. Rebecca only caught glimpses of his plan. He contacted trusted legal experts, had private meetings with board members, and quietly gathered evidence to expose the blackmailer's scheme. Rebecca continued her duties at work, forcing herself to remain calm as whispers circulated about bigger changes at Stone Enterprises. Finally, the day of reckoning arrived. The board called an emergency meeting to address pressing matters. Rebecca wasn't invited, but Ms. Brown was. That morning, Adrian sent Rebecca a brief text. "No matter what you hear, trust me." She sat at her desk, trying to focus on spreadsheets while her nerves were on edge. The meeting stretched for hours. Then, suddenly, Ms. Brown emerged from the boardroom, her expression a mixture of shock and relief. She said nothing to Rebecca, rushing away with phone in hand. It wasn't until late afternoon that Adrian himself appeared, walking through the office with a commanding stride. He wore a crisp suit, his face a mask of composure. He headed straight to his penthouse office. 10 minutes later, Ms. Brown called Rebecca. "Mr. Stone wants to see you now." Heart thumping, Rebecca rode the private elevator up, stepping into the office with shaky knees. Adrian stood by the window, gazing out at the city. He turned when she entered, and a slow smile broke across his features. "It's over," he said quietly. She swallowed hard. "What happened?" He exhaled, walking toward her. "I showed the board the blackmailer's messages and threats. Also found out he forged some photos to make them look more compromising than they were. Legal is pressing charges against him. The board realized I was the target of a plot to force changes in our contracts." Her eyes widened with relief. "So," he nodded. "Yes. They fully support me now that the truth is out." Her heart soared, but a flicker of doubt remained. "What about us? Did you have to deny our relationship?" He took her hands. "I told them the truth, that you and I have had personal feelings, but that we never let it affect our professional roles. I offered to step down if the board believed we acted unethically." Her breath caught. "Oh, Adrian." He squeezed her hands. They decided not to demand my resignation. They accepted that I handled the situation responsibly. Some conditions may apply, like ensuring no direct favoritism or conflicts of interest, but they're giving us room to handle our relationship ethically. Tears pooled in her eyes. She had feared the worst, but now relief and joy flooded her. "So, we're allowed to be together?" He nodded, cupping her cheek.
Yes.
"As long as we keep our roles in the company separate and remain professional in the workplace." A gentle smile tugged at his lips. "If you'd rather transfer to another department or continue under Ms. Brown, we can discuss that. But the board won't stand in our way." A laugh of disbelief escaped her lips, tears rolling down her cheeks. She threw her arms around his neck. He embraced her tightly, pressing his face into her hair. "Rebecca," he murmured, his voice breaking with emotion, "I'm so sorry for everything you had to endure, but we made it." She leaned back, gazing at him through tear-filled eyes. "I'd go through it all again if it meant ending up here with you." He kissed her, long and sweet, sealing the promise of a future they'd fought for. In that moment, all the fear and suspense melted away, replaced by warmth and hope. The cityscape behind them felt like a witness to their triumph. Life didn't magically become perfect overnight. There were still challenges at work, rumors to quell, and business rivalries to manage. But Rebecca and Adrian faced them together. She continued to excel in her administrative role, later transferring to a separate branch of the company to avoid direct conflict of interest. Adrian's respect for her professionalism only grew. In time, they found a comfortable balance. They woke up each morning in the same bed, sometimes in his mansion, other times in her modest apartment, depending on their schedule. On weekends, they explored the city like any normal couple, going to restaurants, visiting art galleries, even taking walks in the park. Adrian discovered he could be himself around her, free from the constant pressure to be invincible. They still remembered how it all began. Rebecca hiding in a millionaire CEO's closet, terrified of being caught in a forbidden moment. That chance encounter could have spelled disaster, but it led them to a deeper connection than either thought possible. Standing together on a sunny morning, weeks after all the drama ended, Rebecca gazed at Adrian across the kitchen table. The sunlight highlighted the strong lines of his face, his dark hair slightly messy from sleep. She felt a surge of affection so strong it nearly took her breath away. He looked up, noticing her stare. A small grin curved his lips. "What are you thinking about?" She shrugged, smiling. "Just us. How we got here. How grateful I am that we didn't give up." He reached out, took her hand, and pressed a soft kiss to her knuckles. "I'm grateful too," he murmured. They shared a warm breakfast, talking about the day's plans. There would be more work, more responsibilities, but the storm that once threatened to separate them had passed. Even if new storms arose, they both knew now that their bond was strong enough to endure. It wasn't a fairy tale romance. It was messy, risky, and filled with real-life challenges, but it was theirs a love that began in the shadows of a closet and grew into the light. Together, they proved that even the most forbidden moments can lead to the happiest endings when two hearts refuse to let fear win.